Alright, hi guys, Sam here. We're going to do page 128, question E. So the instructions are solve the radical equations A algebraically and B graphically. So I'm just going to start with B graphically, personal preference. Okay, so first of all, we're going to look for the restrictions on this because it makes it easier when you're guessing points for the graph. So we get our restrictions from what's inside of the root. So we're going to start with, take what's inside, so x plus 1 greater than or equal to 0. Now, we're going to move the 1 over, so x is greater than or equal to negative 1. Okay, so there's our restriction, and it gives us a place to start when we're guessing. So we're going to make a little table here, table of values. We have x on the left side, y on the right side. Okay, now we're just going to start plugging numbers in. So negative 1, and I'm just going to read my answers for the sake of time, but you can plug this in. All you're doing is plugging the x in the equation. So negative 1 ends up being 0. Now I'm going to skip a line, and I'll tell you why in a second. 0 ends up being 0. So what you need to recognize here when you get this is the graph might essentially have 3 points, one going above the 0 and then coming back down, right? If this is the x-axis. So what you have to do is now you have to go back and plug in negative 0.5. Sorry, it's a little messy. Okay, and then what that ends up giving you is a y value of 0.21. Okay, so now we can proceed, and then 1 gives you negative 0.59. And then 2 gives you negative 1.26. Extend this a little bit. And then I'm just going to keep going so I have a few points to make a nice graph. 3 is negative 2. And 4 is negative 2.76. And I'm rounding these because it's pretty rough when you're drawing the graph. Okay, so now we know that when x is negative 1 or 0, it's going to be touching the x axis. So we can write x equals negative 1 or 0, meaning the points would be negative 1, 0, and 0, 0. Kind of looks like a smiley face there. Anyways, so now we're going to plug these points in. So negative 1 at 0, and then negative 0.5 at 0.21. So, I mean, it's rough, right? And then 0 at 0, and then 1 at 0.59 is like a little over half. There. And then 2 is going to be at negative 1.26. And then 3 at negative 2, exactly. And 4 at negative 2.76, so about 2 3/4. Now we're just going to connect these dots. Trying so hard to keep this straight. Okay, and then we know that it's only going to continue the down on the right because the restriction that applies to it. It can't be less than negative 1. Okay, so now we've done part B, solving graphically, so we can continue to part A. Okay, so I'm just going to rewrite out the question just because it's a little easier to see what's above and more linear. Okay, so we're going to be looking for we're going to basically solve for x here. And so, first of all, we're trying to get rid of this square root over this, right? So the way to do that is you want to isolate it. So x plus 1 equals, and then we'll move over the x and the negative 1, which will turn positive when we move it over. Okay, and then we got, this is under a root, sorry. And then we got a square both sides. Because now the root squared is going to just equal x plus 1. This is going to be a little more complicated. So Now we've got x plus 1 equals x squared plus 2x plus 1. And that's just foiling, but I'm sure Miss Lane has taught you guys to do in your head, or any other math teacher that you have. Anyways, so now we're going to move the x and the 1 over, so 0 equals x squared, and essentially just minusing 1, minusing x, so plus x, because these are going to cancel out. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but what you got to do is factor out the x. So now we have x times x plus 1, and then x equals, so we're trying to make this equal 0, so first when this x is 0, the whole equation, everything else equals 0 because you're multiplying, or to make 1 turn into 0, you're going to turn x into negative 1 here. Okay, and so those points are going to be 0, 0, and negative 1, 0. And you know this is most likely right because these are the same, matches up graphically and algebraically, which is what you want to see. Okay, thanks. Until next time.